When you're scrolling through the sea of cheap gaming laptops that promise ultra-fast FPS for a price you'd normally spend on a cheap TV, it's easy to feel a little hesitant. I've seen a lot of people buy a bargain model, only to discover the GPU throttles after 10 minutes, the fans turn the cabin into a construction site, and the battery dies before they even finish a single level. That regret is real, and it's why I pause before clicking add to cart on any machine that looks too good to be true. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The cefesfy customized laptop tries to position itself as a middle ground solution, a 15.6-inch device that claims desktop-class power without the massive price tag you'd see on a dedicated gaming rig. It ships with an Intel Core i7-7150U 10-core processor, 16GB of RAM, a 512GB SSD, and a full-size backlit keyboard with a fingerprint sensor. On paper, it looks like a decent all-rounder for both work and play, but the real question is whether it delivers a smooth gaming experience without turning your desk into a heatwave. Let's start with what matters most for gamers: how the laptop handles sustained workloads. The i7-7150U is a low-power, 10-core chip that leans heavily on efficiency rather than raw horsepower. In short bursts, think opening Photoshop, launching a game, or compiling code. It feels snappy. You'll notice quick load times from the SSD and fluid multitasking thanks to the 16GB of RAM. However, when you keep a demanding title like Cyberpunk 2077 on the screen for an hour, the CPU reaches its thermal ceiling and the fan ramps up. The noise level climbs to a noticeable hum, which isn't unusual for laptops in this price bracket, but it can be distracting if you're trying to hear in-game audio cues. Because the device lacks a dedicated graphics card and relies on the integrated Intel Iris Xe graphics, it's not built for ultra-high settings. In real-world testing, you can comfortably run titles such as Valorant, League of Legends, and Fortnite at 1080p with medium settings and still hit 50-60 FPS. That's more than enough for competitive play where frame rate stability matters more than visual fidelity. On the other hand, graphically intensive AAA games will need you to dial settings down to low, and even then you might hover around 30 FPS. If you're the type who wants to crank graphics to max and sit in a dark room watching every particle, this laptop will feel like a compromise. Heat is another practical concern. The aluminum chassis helps dissipate warmth, and the anti-glare FHD panel stays relatively cool to the touch even after an hour of gaming. The underside, however, can become noticeably warm if you're using the laptop on your lap. Placing it on a flat surface with good airflow like a desk or a laptop stand keeps temperatures in check. The built-in RJ45 Ethernet port is a nice touch for gamers who prefer wired connections. I found that plugging directly into my router reduced latency compared to Wi-Fi, which is a small but tangible advantage during an online match. Battery life is where the trade-off becomes obvious. With the integrated graphics and a 15-hour claim for light tasks, the reality is more like 56 hours of mixed use, browsing, document editing, and a bit of streaming. If you start a gaming session, the battery drops to about 30% in an hour. That's expected. Gaming draws a lot of power, but it means you'll either need to stay near an outlet or keep a power bank handy. For students or professionals who need full-day portability without tethering, this might be a deal-breaker. Now, who should actually consider buying this machine? If you're a college student who needs a laptop that can handle coursework, occasional streaming, and light to moderate gaming, the cefesfy laptop hits a sweet spot. The 512GB SSD gives you enough room for a handful of modern games, large project files, and your media library, while the 16GB of RAM ensures that you won't be swapping out applications mid-session. The backlit keyboard with fingerprint reader adds a layer of convenience and security that many budget gaming laptops skip. For anyone who plays indie titles, strategy games, or enjoys esports titles that aren't graphically demanding, this laptop delivers a respectable experience without the overheating nightmares of cheaper models. Conversely, if you're a hardcore gamer who expects buttery smooth 144Hz performance on AAA titles, or a content creator who needs a powerhouse GPU for video rendering, this isn't the right fit. The lack of a dedicated GPU, the modest fan noise under load, and the limited battery endurance make it unsuitable for those demanding scenarios. In those cases, you'd be better off saving up for a laptop with an RTX series card or investing in a desktop where you can control cooling and upgrade components over time. Let's talk about practical strengths and weaknesses in everyday language. On the positive side, the connectivity suite is surprisingly comprehensive. Besides the usual USB-C and USB-A ports, you get HDMI, an SD card reader, and that Ethernet jack I mentioned earlier. That means you can hook up an